So, continuing from the last episode, take me through the resolution of the exercise with negative associations to the childhood home.
Okay. Did you do it?
No?
Okay, well, so for anyone who did do it,
Yeah.
right, just to repeat what it was, is to write down all of your negative experiences and your negative memories and negative events that you remember from your childhood in your home, right? And that list can be as long or as short as it wants to be. So when you've done that exercise, you go in, like the title is My Childhood Home, right? And then you go in and you cross out My Childhood Home, and instead you put the title Love. And then you read the list. Because, like we said last time, people are drawn to what is familiar. And so, usually, we find good things in partners, but we also find the bad things that are familiar to us. So, a lot of those things on the list of difficulties you had in your childhood home are actually what, when your subconscious mind is looking for love, that's what it looks for. And that is why we fall for the partners that we see as being wrong, because they hurt us in the same ways that we were hurt as children in our home, right? So it's a really cool exercise, and thank you to Teal Swan because she was the one that I read it on. But it's an exercise that I find my patients, whenever they do it, there's kind of like that, oh wow, you just totally described the negative people that I draw into my life, right? And then from that point on, you can start to see those things as red flags instead of having your subconscious hijack your conscious mind wanting security and safety and love and all of those things, because you can go, uh-oh, here's another person that totally falls into my familiarity pattern, and maybe I should take it a little bit more slowly. Maybe I should see, what's going on there. So that was the fun exercise that I had you do last time.
Would you say it allows you to enter your subconscious mind?
It definitely gives you insight into what it is that your subconscious mind is drawn to. And I think it's imago theory, but I'm not sure, where it's kind of like the theory behind why the subconscious does it is because it's trying to fix the things that went wrong in your childhood. And it kind of hopes that if I find someone that has the same pattern, but this time, let's say, for example, a father travels a lot, right? So now that person is generally drawn to people who are not around a lot, right? Because that was the pain that they had, that they were always without their parent, right? So then so the theory is that you now choose, or your subconscious chooses partners that repeat that behavior, hoping that this time the person will decide differently than your father did, right? So instead of leaving, that person might say, you know what, this time I'm not going to go. I'm going to choose you. I'm going to stay with you, right? So I think that we look for resolution of these childhood patterns, but instead of finding resolution, we tend to just find the same pattern again. And so I think if you're aware of it, and you know what it is that you want, and you know what it is that your subconscious is looking for subconsciously, then you can also bring that to the surface and address it when you recognize it. So it's the seeing of the red flags, if you so will.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
So, entering cultural relationships.
Yes.
Intercultural relationships are incredibly common here, especially in the UAE, right? But what makes them specifically harder than people expect when they go into that?
Right. Okay, so this is maybe a little bit longer, so I'm going to kind of broaden that. So I think when we think about culture, right, we think about the food in that country. We think about maybe the way people dress, right? So as a Bavarian, we think about the Oktoberfest picture with the beers and the dress, and so we kind of reduce culture down to those obvious things, right? But we very rarely delve into what cultural norms we carry within us that are not quite as obvious, right? And so I think the way that culture is imparted, and I need to kind of describe culture. To me, culture is your family culture. It's your school culture. It's your friends. It's your town culture or your city culture. It's your country culture. It's your religion culture. It's kind of all of that stuff that comes together and teaches you the rules of society, right? So now when people come from different cultures, they might know, for example, that, okay, I'm Christian, you're Muslim. That means that, these are the differences between our religions. Or, you come from a country where, I don't know, it's okay to wear a bikini in public, and someone else comes from a country where that would never work. So we have kind of that surface level idea of culture, but we very rarely look deeper than that surface level definition of culture. Now, culture could be anything from how much physical touch is permitted, how much vulnerability is in intimate relationships. It could be, how do you raise your children? It could be, how do you treat your elders? How do you navigate fights? There's so many different things that are kind of under the surface that are not overt, because not a lot of people talk about these things, that we kind of go with. And the way we're socialized, right, is we are taught, okay, in this culture that I'm growing up in, let's say the Germans, right? The Germans are very punctual. And so for us, punctuality is very important. And if someone is late, it's a disrespect to us. Other cultures are very flexible with time. And for them, if you are, on time, you're really early. And so there's like this mismatch in terms of just punctuality. Now, without knowing this about other cultures, people take these things very, very personally, because if I'm German and I expect you to be on time, if not 5 minutes early, right? Because on time is already late in Germany, and you come from a culture where being 15 minutes late is the norm, and probably even a little bit on like early, then every time you come to my house, if we don't talk about it, I'm going to be hurt. I'm going to be frustrated. I'm going to be maybe even angry because you disrespected me. But not knowing that this is just a cultural difference and not a personal issue causes a lot of difficulties, right? So now to take that to relationships, I think a lot of people that are in intercultural relationships, they fall in love, they're excited about the other person, they don't question kind of those deeper cultural things. They look at the topographic cultural things, like, hey, you know what? If we go to a beach, I'd prefer that you don't wear a bikini, right? Like those kind of things. But very rarely do people look at, let's say, physical touch, let's say vulnerability, right? Like I had a conversation with someone who was from I think it was Norway or something, where people from Norway don't talk a lot, and they're very they hold a lot back. They're not vulnerable. They're very reserved. And so it's just very interesting to see then, coming from, let's say, kind of more North America, where a lot of talking is done, that can cause problems in a relationship, right? Because I'm going to be like, you don't want to open up to me. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with our relationship? And the other person is like, why do you keep asking me to open up? We don't do that, right? So it's all of those under the surface things that tend to cause problems later on down the line in an intercultural relationship if they are not spoken about. And now the difficulty with under the surface cultural ways of doing things, most of the time, even we're not aware of them, because if we've always been around people from the same culture, then we've never had to question those things. They are normal. They're drilled into us as children, and then they become normal. And then we just assume that everyone else thinks the same way, right? And I think this is where a lot of my intercultural relationships kind of crumble, because instead of actually talking to each other and being curious about each other, they just make assumptions. So if you're late, then you're not interested in me, and my time is not valuable to you. So how can this ever work, right? Instead of saying, hey, can I ask you something? When I say come at 7, you usually come at 7:20 or 7:30. Can you explain that to me? And then the other person might be like, oh, I didn't even think about that. In our culture, it's normal to be a half an hour late. It's actually polite to be a half an hour late and not be on time. And then when you can have that conversation, then you resolve the issue. But again, I think people take things personally way before they have the wherewithal of approaching the other person with curiosity and asking. And so what I love to tell my patients to do, like the couples, is there's a TV show, and people are going to laugh at this. It's called 90 Day Fiancé. And it's a show about, so in America, most people want an American passport, right? So in America, if you are engaged to someone, you get a 3-month visa to come to America and to see if you're compatible with your partner. And within those 90 days, within those 33 months,
This is a real thing?
yeah, it's a show. You have to get married, right? And if you don't get married, then the person is shipped back to where they come from. And so why I love watching it and why I have people watch it is because it becomes so glaringly obvious how different people from different cultures navigate relationships, the expectations, the involvement of families. And so it's a really fun show to watch if you're interested in understanding the cultural component in relationships to kind of help potentially your own intercultural relationship. And the cultural thing, by the way, if it's just out of interest, there's a thing called, I think, the cultural iceberg, created by a psychologist called Edward Hall, I think. And it kind of it highlights, the obvious cultural things, but then also a lot of the ways people can be different that we never kind of consciously think about because we were taught that's normal and that's how everyone is. So I always teach curiosity, right? Because I think that making these assumptions that come from your culture, your family culture, whatever culture, right, is difficult in relationships. So I'm like, be curious, right? So sometimes what I do is I have my patients choose animals that they kind of vibe with, right? So, and now I kind of go, okay, so let's say, like, what would an animal be that you would be?
Lion.
Okay, so you're a lion, and let's say I'm a dolphin, right? Okay, now we both look like humans, so we both make assumptions culturally that we are the same. But now, if you're a lion and I'm a dolphin, it's obvious that we're not from the same culture, right? So, and then I have kind of this like, okay, so if you see your partner as a lion and your partner does something that doesn't make sense to you, right? You kind of go, okay, lion, why is it that you do these things? And you go, well, I'm a lion. So let's use the punctuality one. I'm a lion. Lions are always 15 minutes, if not 30 minutes late. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. I'm a dolphin. Dolphins are always on time, right? And so you can kind of create that little almost separation from us being humans and hence being the same to kind of open a window for curiosity in a fun way, right? And so now you can do that with everything. And so I had a relationship where we came from different cultures also. And whenever I did something that he didn't understand, he would always open up with, can I ask you something? And I'd be like, sure. And then he would say, so why is it that you do this and this and this? And I'll be like, oh, because this and this is how I always have done it, or this is how I learned it at home, or this is how I learned it from whatever. And it kind of opens that dialogue. And I think that dialogue has to come from a place of, what's it called?
Curiosity.
Benefit of a doubt. If you don't have the benefit of the doubt and you go into, this person is 15 minutes late, they obviously don't respect me, they're doing this to hurt me, then I won't have the benefit of the doubt to go, can I ask you something? Why is it that you're always late, right? Because then I'm automatically jumping to the interpretation that I have, the assumption that I have around this behavior. So I think in terms of every relationship, this is important because if you break it down to a family culture, right? Everybody is still different. Everybody still grew up with different rules, even if you're from the same like culture, right? And so I think it's very important to kind of open up and ask these questions all the time and not to make the assumptions and to keep the benefit of the doubt and not assume, like I think we said in one of the last episodes, that the other person is doing this to hurt you. Instead, they're doing this because that's how they grew up. That's what their culture taught them. And it has nothing to do with you. And if it hurts you, you bring it up and you ask and you negotiate.